Question 1. The analysis reveals that a prospective student preparing for the American University of Morelos entrance exam has discovered a method that could significantly improve their score by referencing external study guides not permitted during the actual examination period. Considering the university's regulatory framework for its entrance exams, which approach best reflects professional and ethical conduct for the applicant? Option A. Utilizing the external study guides discreetly during the exam to ensure a higher score, rationalizing that it demonstrates a strong desire for admission. Option B. Attempting to gain access to past exam papers and their solutions, believing this is a standard preparation method for competitive entrance exams. Option C. Relying solely on personal knowledge and preparation, adhering strictly to the exam's stated rules regarding permitted resources. Option D. Seeking advice from current students on specific question types and potential answers, framing it as legitimate academic networking. Correct answer is C. Relying solely on personal knowledge and preparation, adhering strictly to the exam's stated rules regarding permitted resources. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams, especially for a competitive program at the American University of Morelos, can lead students to seek an unfair advantage. The university's regulatory framework, as outlined in its entrance exam guidelines and academic integrity policies, mandates that all applicants undergo a standardized and equitable evaluation process. Any action that compromises this fairness, such as using unauthorized assistance, directly violates these foundational principles. The correct approach involves a student relying solely on their own knowledge and preparation to answer the exam questions. This aligns with the American University of Morelos' explicit guidelines for its entrance examination, which prohibit any form of external assistance or academic dishonesty. This approach upholds the principle of academic integrity, ensuring that all candidates are assessed on their genuine abilities and understanding, thereby maintaining the credibility and fairness of the admissions process. It respects the university's commitment to admitting students who meet its academic standards through legitimate means. An incorrect approach would be to consult unauthorized materials or seek assistance from others during the exam. This directly contravenes the American University of Morelos' entrance exam regulations, which strictly forbid such actions. This behavior constitutes academic dishonesty, undermining the integrity of the examination and the university's admission standards. It also demonstrates a lack of respect for the principles of fair competition and personal academic responsibility, which are implicitly expected of all prospective students. Another incorrect approach would be to claim ignorance of the rules regarding exam conduct. While a student might genuinely be unaware of specific nuances, the American University of Morelos' entrance exam guidelines are made available to all applicants. Failing to familiarize oneself with these fundamental rules, especially those pertaining to academic integrity, is a dereliction of the applicant's responsibility. This approach fails to acknowledge the ethical obligation to understand and adhere to the established procedures of the institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough understanding of the governing regulations and ethical codes. In this context, it means carefully reviewing the American University of Morelos' entrance exam guidelines and academic integrity policies. When faced with a situation where personal gain might be achieved through questionable means, the professional must prioritize adherence to these rules and ethical principles. This involves self-reflection on one's actions and their potential impact on the fairness and integrity of the process. If there is any doubt about the permissibility of an action, the prudent course is to err on the side of caution and seek clarification from the relevant university authorities, rather than proceeding with an action that could be construed as a violation. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates that the American University of Morelos is facing pressure to meet its international student enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year. A prospective applicant from a country with a less rigorous grading system has submitted transcripts that appear to be significantly higher than expected for their academic background, with a recommendation letter from a known contact of a senior administrator. The admissions committee is considering how to proceed with this application. Which of the following approaches best upholds the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair admissions? Option A. Conduct a thorough verification of the applicant's academic records potentially requiring external credential evaluation, and assess their suitability based solely on the university's established admission criteria, regardless of enrollment pressures. Option B. Waive certain academic requirements for this applicant due to the perceived difficulty of their home country's grading system, allowing for a less stringent evaluation to facilitate enrollment. Option C. Expedite the admission of the applicant to help meet enrollment targets, assuming the recommendation letter and high grades are sufficient indicators of potential. Option D. Accept the applicant based on the recommendation from the senior administrator's contact, prioritizing the relationship and potential for future contributions over a detailed academic review. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough verification of the applicant's academic records, potentially requiring external credential evaluation, and assess their suitability based solely on the university's established admission criteria, regardless of enrollment pressures. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's operational needs and the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fair admission processes. The admissions committee must balance the desire to attract qualified international students, which can contribute to the university's financial health and diversity, with the imperative to ensure that all applicants are evaluated based on merit and adherence to established academic standards. Misrepresenting applicant qualifications or creating a biased evaluation process would undermine the university's reputation and violate principles of fairness and transparency. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective assessment of each applicant's academic credentials and suitability for the program, strictly adhering to the American University of Morelos' established admission criteria and any relevant Mexican educational regulations governing university admissions. This ensures that decisions are based on merit, preventing any appearance of impropriety or preferential treatment. This aligns with the ethical duty of academic institutions to uphold standards of fairness and academic excellence, and any applicable regulations that mandate transparent and equitable admission processes. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking discrepancies in an applicant's academic record to meet enrollment targets would be professionally unacceptable. This action directly violates the principle of academic integrity and could contravene regulations requiring accurate representation of applicant qualifications. It creates an unfair advantage for the applicant and devalues the achievements of other qualified candidates. Another incorrect approach, such as prioritizing applicants from specific regions or backgrounds, without a clear, merit-based justification outlined in the university's admission policy, would constitute discriminatory practice. This not only breaches ethical standards of equal opportunity, but also likely violates any applicable Mexican laws or university regulations that prohibit discrimination in admissions. A third incorrect approach, which is to accept an applicant based on a recommendation from a faculty member, without independently verifying the applicant's qualifications against the established admission criteria, introduces bias and undermines the systematic evaluation process. This can lead to the admission of underqualified students, compromising academic standards and potentially violating university policies that mandate objective assessment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations requires a commitment to ethical conduct and adherence to established policies and regulations. Professionals should first identify the core ethical and regulatory obligations at play. Then, they should evaluate potential courses of action against these obligations, prioritizing transparency, fairness, and meritocracy. When faced with conflicting pressures, such as enrollment targets versus integrity, professionals must advocate for and implement processes that uphold the integrity of the institution and its academic mission, seeking guidance from university policies and legal counsel if necessary. Question 3. To address the challenge of ensuring fairness and academic integrity in the admissions process for the American University of Morelos entrance exam, when a candidate is known to a member of the admissions committee, what is the most appropriate impact assessment approach? Option A. Recommend a modified assessment process for this candidate that focuses primarily on their personal attributes rather than strict adherence to academic benchmarks. Option B. Inform the admissions committee member of the candidate's application and allow them to unilaterally approve the admission based on their personal knowledge. Option C. Expedite the candidate's admission by prioritizing their application due to the personal connection, assuming they meet the general requirements. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive and objective review of the candidate's application against all established entrance criteria, documenting the assessment process and seeking an independent review of the final decision. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive and objective review of the candidate's application against all established entrance criteria, documenting the assessment process and seeking an independent review of the final decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure that decisions are made in the best interest of the institution, adhering strictly to the American University of Morelos's established ethical guidelines and entrance examination regulations. The pressure to admit a candidate who may not meet the standard criteria due to personal connections necessitates a rigorous and objective impact assessment process. The correct approach involves a thorough and unbiased evaluation of the candidate's qualifications against the established entrance criteria, documenting all findings, and seeking impartial review. This aligns with the American University of Morelos's commitment to academic integrity and fair admissions practices, as implicitly required by its entrance examination framework. The ethical imperative is to uphold the integrity of the admissions process, ensuring that all candidates are assessed on merit, and that no undue influence compromises the university's standards. This approach prioritizes transparency, fairness, and adherence to institutional policy, which are foundational to maintaining the university's reputation and the credibility of its entrance examinations. An incorrect approach that prioritizes the personal connection over objective assessment would fail to uphold the university's commitment to merit-based admissions. This would represent an ethical failure by allowing personal bias to influence an institutional decision, potentially undermining the academic standards the university aims to maintain. Such an action could also violate implicit guidelines within the entrance examination framework that demand impartiality. Another incorrect approach that involves circumventing the standard assessment process, even with the intention of expediting a decision, is also professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the established checks and balances designed to ensure fairness and accuracy, creating a risk of overlooking critical deficiencies or setting a precedent for preferential treatment. This action would demonstrate a disregard for the established regulatory framework governing admissions and an ethical lapse in professional conduct. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's mission, values, and specific entrance examination regulations. It requires a commitment to objectivity, a willingness to document all steps taken, and the courage to seek guidance or review from appropriate authorities when faced with potential conflicts or ambiguous situations. Professionals must prioritize adherence to established procedures and ethical principles over personal relationships or perceived expediency. Question 4. The review process indicates that a close personal acquaintance has applied for admission to the American University of Morelos, and you have been asked to provide input on their application. Considering the university's commitment to a merit-based and equitable admissions process, which of the following actions best aligns with the established regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for academic admissions? Option A. Objectively evaluate the applicant's qualifications against all established admission criteria, ensuring that any personal relationship is disclosed to the relevant admissions committee and that you recuse yourself from any decision-making role concerning this applicant. Option B. Advocate strongly for the applicant's admission by emphasizing their positive attributes to the admissions committee, leveraging your personal knowledge to highlight their potential. Option C. Discreetly provide the admissions committee with a curated selection of the applicant's achievements, focusing on their strengths while omitting any potential weaknesses. Option D. Immediately inform the admissions committee that you cannot provide any input due to the personal relationship, without further evaluation of the applicant's merits. The correct answer is A. Objectively evaluate the applicant's qualifications against all established admission criteria, ensuring that any personal relationship is disclosed to the relevant admissions committee and that you recuse yourself from any decision-making role concerning this applicant. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic admissions while facing potential external pressure. The core of the challenge lies in maintaining the integrity of the admissions process, ensuring fairness to all applicants, and adhering to the American University of Morelos' established guidelines. Careful judgment is required to balance the desire to support a potential candidate with the overarching responsibility to uphold academic standards and institutional policy. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective assessment of the applicant's qualifications against the established criteria for admission to the American University of Morelos. This approach is professionally sound because it directly aligns with the university's regulatory framework for admissions, which mandates a merit-based evaluation. Ethically, it upholds principles of fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants, preventing any undue influence or preferential treatment. By focusing solely on the applicant's academic record, extracurricular achievements, and any other relevant, predefined admission criteria, this method ensures that decisions are transparent, justifiable, and free from bias. An incorrect approach that involves advocating for the applicant based on a personal connection, without a rigorous objective assessment, fails to adhere to the university's admission regulations. This bypasses the established meritocratic system and introduces an element of favoritism, which is ethically problematic and undermines the credibility of the admissions process. Such an action could be seen as a breach of professional conduct, as it prioritizes personal relationships over institutional policy and fairness. Another incorrect approach, which is to immediately reject the applicant due to the perceived conflict of interest, is also professionally unsound. While acknowledging potential conflicts is important, an outright rejection without a proper evaluation is premature and unfair to the applicant. It fails to explore whether the personal connection can be managed appropriately through disclosure and recusal from the decision-making process, as per standard ethical guidelines. This approach demonstrates a lack of nuanced judgment and an unwillingness to follow established procedures for managing conflicts. A further incorrect approach, such as attempting to subtly influence the admissions committee by highlighting only the applicant's strengths while downplaying weaknesses, constitutes a form of misrepresentation. This is ethically dubious as it involves a lack of transparency and honesty. It violates the principle of providing a complete and accurate picture for the admissions committee, thereby compromising the integrity of their decision-making process and potentially leading to an admission based on incomplete or skewed information. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the institution's admission policies and ethical guidelines. When a potential conflict of interest arises, the first step is to identify and acknowledge it. Subsequently, one should consult the relevant policies to determine the appropriate course of action, which may include disclosure of the relationship, recusal from any part of the decision-making process, or seeking guidance from a supervisor or ethics committee. The ultimate goal is to ensure that all decisions are made fairly, objectively, and in strict accordance with established regulations and ethical principles. Question 5. What factors determine the appropriateness of a holistic admissions review process at the American University of Morelos, considering the need to balance academic standards with equitable access to higher education? Option A. The primary focus on achieving specific enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year, regardless of individual applicant qualifications. Option B. The extent to which the review process considers a wide range of applicant attributes beyond standardized test scores, including academic background, personal achievements, and demonstrated potential for success. Option C. The exclusive reliance on a single, high-stakes entrance examination score as the sole determinant of an applicant's suitability for admission. Option D. The degree to which admissions decisions are influenced by external recommendations from influential individuals or organizations, irrespective of the applicant's academic merit. The correct answer is B. The extent to which the review process considers a wide range of applicant attributes beyond standardized test scores, including academic background, personal achievements, and demonstrated potential for success. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's academic mission with the ethical considerations of admitting students who may not meet the established academic standards. The pressure to fill enrollment quotas can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to decisions that compromise the integrity of the admissions process and the academic reputation of the American University of Morelos. Careful judgment is required to ensure that admissions decisions are fair, transparent, and aligned with the university's stated goals and regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of each applicant's potential to succeed at the university, considering a range of factors beyond just standardized test scores. This includes evaluating their academic record, personal essays, letters of recommendation, and any demonstrated potential for growth or unique contributions. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with best practices in higher education admission, as it seeks to identify students who are not only academically capable, but also possess qualities that will enrich the university community. It also implicitly adheres to any Mexican Ministry of Education guidelines that emphasize holistic review and equitable access to higher education, provided such guidelines exist and are interpreted to support such a comprehensive evaluation. An incorrect approach that prioritizes enrollment numbers over academic merit would be ethically problematic. This would involve admitting students primarily to meet quotas, even if their academic qualifications are significantly below the university's standards. This could lead to higher dropout rates, a dilution of academic rigor, and potential reputational damage for the American University of Morelos. Such a practice could also violate principles of fairness and equal opportunity if it disadvantages more qualified applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on a single metric, such as a specific GPA or entrance exam score, without considering other relevant factors. While standardized metrics can be useful, an over-reliance on them can exclude promising candidates who may have overcome challenges or possess unique talents not captured by a single score. This rigid adherence to a narrow set of criteria can be seen as a failure to conduct a thorough and equitable assessment, potentially contravening principles of fairness and individual assessment. A third incorrect approach would be to allow external pressures, such as recommendations from influential individuals or political figures, to unduly influence admissions decisions without proper academic justification. This introduces bias and undermines the integrity of the admissions process, potentially leading to the admission of less qualified candidates at the expense of more deserving ones. Such a practice erodes trust in the university's admissions system and can be seen as a breach of ethical conduct. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's mission, values, and admission policies. Admissions committees should be trained in holistic review methodologies and ethical considerations. A robust appeals process and regular review of admission statistics are also crucial to ensure fairness and identify any potential biases or systemic issues. Transparency in the admissions process, to the extent permissible by privacy regulations, can also foster trust and accountability. Question 6. The control framework reveals the American University of Morelos has implemented several measures to combat academic plagiarism, including the use of anti-plagiarism software, a clearly defined academic integrity policy, and a disciplinary process for violations. Which of the following approaches would most effectively assess the overall impact and efficacy of this control framework in preventing plagiarism? Option A. Evaluating the extent to which the anti-plagiarism software is utilized by faculty, the frequency of its updates, and the training provided to students and staff on its proper use and interpretation of results, alongside an assessment of the policy's clarity and the consistency of disciplinary actions taken. Option B. Confirming the presence of anti-plagiarism software on all university computers and verifying that the academic integrity policy is readily accessible on the university website. Option C. Conducting surveys among students to gauge their awareness of the university's academic integrity policy and their perceived likelihood of being caught if they plagiarize. Option D. Reviewing the number of disciplinary cases initiated and resolved in the past academic year related to plagiarism and noting the severity of the penalties imposed. The correct answer is A. Evaluating the extent to which the anti-plagiarism software is utilized by faculty, the frequency of its updates, and the training provided to students and staff on its proper use and interpretation of results, alongside an assessment of the policy's clarity and the consistency of disciplinary actions taken. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to critically evaluate the effectiveness of a university's internal controls in preventing academic misconduct, specifically plagiarism. The challenge lies in moving beyond a superficial understanding of control mechanisms to a deeper analysis of their practical impact and potential weaknesses. Careful judgment is required to discern which approach genuinely assesses the control framework's efficacy, rather than merely describing its components. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of the control framework's design and operational effectiveness in mitigating plagiarism risks. This means evaluating whether existing policies, procedures, and technological tools are adequately implemented and consistently enforced to deter, detect, and address instances of academic dishonesty. This aligns with the principles of robust internal control systems, which aim to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives, including academic integrity. Specifically, it reflects a proactive and analytical stance, seeking evidence of actual impact rather than assuming effectiveness based on the mere existence of controls. An approach that focuses solely on the existence of anti-plagiarism software without assessing its implementation, update frequency, or the training provided to faculty and students on its use is procedurally flawed, fails to consider the operational aspect of the control, which is crucial for its effectiveness. Similarly, an approach that emphasizes the disciplinary actions taken after plagiarism is detected, without evaluating the preventative measures, overlooks the primary goal of a control framework, which is to prevent or minimize the occurrence of the risk in the first place. Finally, an approach that relies on student self-reporting of awareness of plagiarism policies without independent verification or assessment of actual adherence is insufficient. It does not provide objective evidence of the control's effectiveness in shaping behavior and upholding academic integrity. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying the specific risk being managed, in this case, plagiarism. They should then analyze the control framework's objectives in relation to this risk. The next step involves evaluating the design of the controls to determine if they are logically structured to address the risk. Crucially, the assessment must then move to the operational effectiveness of these controls, seeking evidence of their consistent application and impact. This involves looking for data, feedback, and observable outcomes that demonstrate whether the controls are achieving their intended purpose. Question 7. Strategic planning requires the American University of Morelos to consider expanding its online course offerings to reach a wider student demographic. Which of the following approaches best ensures that this expansion aligns with the university's mission and regulatory compliance? Option A. Implementing the expansion rapidly to gain a first-mover advantage, with operational details to be addressed as they arise. Option B. Focusing the expansion on programs with the lowest faculty requirements and highest potential for student enrollment numbers, regardless of existing program strengths. Option C. Conducting a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the effect on academic quality, faculty workload, student support services, and compliance with relevant educational accreditation standards. Option D. Prioritizing the expansion based solely on projected revenue increases and market demand for online programs. Correct answer is C. Conducting a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the effect on academic quality, faculty workload, student support services, and compliance with relevant educational accreditation standards. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions, balancing the need for strategic growth with the ethical imperative to maintain academic integrity and ensure equitable access to education. The American University of Morelos, like any reputable institution, operates under specific regulatory frameworks and ethical guidelines that govern its admissions processes, program development, and resource allocation. The challenge lies in making decisions that are not only financially prudent, but also compliant with these regulations and uphold the university's mission and values. Careful judgment is required to navigate potential conflicts between ambitious expansion goals and the fundamental responsibilities of an educational provider. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that considers all relevant stakeholders and potential consequences. This approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of how proposed changes will affect students, faculty, staff, the university's reputation, and its compliance with educational standards. It necessitates gathering data, consulting with relevant departments, and evaluating risks and benefits in a structured manner. This aligns with the principles of responsible institutional management and good governance, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by educational regulatory bodies. Such an assessment ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with the long-term sustainability and ethical standing of the university. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on financial projections without considering the impact on academic quality would be professionally unacceptable. This failure would violate the ethical obligation to provide a high-quality education and could lead to non-compliance with accreditation standards, potentially jeopardizing the university's standing. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes rapid expansion without adequate infrastructure or faculty support would also be flawed. This could result in a diluted educational experience for students and strain on existing resources, undermining the university's core mission and potentially leading to reputational damage. A third incorrect approach that overlooks potential regulatory hurdles or ethical implications in the pursuit of new programs would be a direct contravention of institutional responsibilities and could expose the university to legal and ethical challenges. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multifaceted evaluation. First, clearly define the strategic objective. Second, identify all potential impacts, both positive and negative, across academic, financial, operational, and reputational dimensions. Third, consult relevant internal and external stakeholders, including academic departments, admissions, legal counsel, and potentially regulatory bodies. Fourth, conduct a risk assessment for each proposed course of action. Fifth, develop mitigation strategies for identified risks. Finally, make a decision based on a holistic understanding of the implications, ensuring alignment with the university's mission, values, and regulatory obligations. Question 8. The assessment process reveals a candidate for the American University of Morelos' medical program has demonstrated exceptional academic potential, but has also expressed a nuanced understanding of patient confidentiality, questioning the extent to which information can be shared with family members without explicit patient consent, even in cases of perceived familial benefit. This raises concerns about their adherence to the strict privacy regulations governing healthcare in Mexico. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation in line with the university's entrance exam guidelines and Mexican healthcare law? Option A. Advise the candidate to seek external ethical training before reapplying, without further assessment of their current understanding or potential for development within the university's framework. Option B. Immediately reject the candidate based on the perceived ethical lapse, as any ambiguity regarding confidentiality is a disqualifying factor. Option C. Conduct a follow-up interview focusing on the candidate's reasoning regarding patient confidentiality and informed consent, referencing specific articles of the General Health Law and the university's ethical code, to gauge their capacity for ethical reasoning and commitment to professional standards. Option D. Prioritize the candidate's high academic scores, assuming ethical understanding will develop through coursework, and proceed with admission. Correct answer is D. Prioritize the candidate's high academic scores, assuming ethical understanding will develop through coursework, and proceed with admission. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a candidate's potential for academic success, but also highlights areas where their understanding of ethical conduct and professional responsibility within the Mexican healthcare system, as governed by relevant laws and university guidelines, may be underdeveloped. This scenario is professionally challenging because the university has a duty to admit students who not only possess academic aptitude, but also demonstrate a commitment to ethical practice and adherence to the regulatory framework governing medical professionals in Mexico. A failure to properly assess and address these ethical considerations could lead to future issues within the healthcare system. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's responses, specifically looking for evidence of understanding and commitment to the principles of patient confidentiality, informed consent, and professional integrity, as mandated by Mexican health regulations and the American University of Morelos' own ethical code. This approach is right because it directly aligns with the university's responsibility to uphold professional standards and prepare graduates who will serve the public ethically. It ensures that the candidate's potential is evaluated not just on academic merit, but also on their grasp of the legal and ethical obligations inherent in the medical profession in Mexico, as outlined in relevant legislation such as the General Health Law, Ley General de Salud, and the university's internal policies. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on academic scores, disregarding the ethical components of the assessment, fails to meet the university's obligation to ensure future practitioners are ethically sound. This overlooks the critical legal and ethical requirements for patient data protection and the necessity of obtaining informed consent, which are fundamental tenets of medical practice in Mexico. Another incorrect approach that dismisses the candidate's ethical concerns as minor or irrelevant demonstrates a lack of understanding of the gravity of ethical breaches in healthcare, which can have severe legal and professional repercussions under Mexican law. Such an approach neglects the university's role in fostering a culture of ethical responsibility from the outset of a student's education. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a holistic evaluation of candidates. This involves weighing academic qualifications alongside demonstrated ethical understanding and alignment with the institution's values and the broader regulatory landscape. When ethical concerns arise, a structured approach should be taken to understand the candidate's perspective, provide educational feedback, and determine if the concerns are addressable or indicative of a fundamental incompatibility with the profession's ethical demands. Question 9. The assessment process reveals a candidate for the American University of Morelos' graduate program in international relations who has a documented instance of plagiarism during their undergraduate studies, for which they received a failing grade on an assignment. The candidate has provided a detailed explanation acknowledging their error, expressing remorse, and outlining steps they have taken to improve their academic research and citation skills since the incident, which occurred 3 years ago. Which of the following approaches best reflects a responsible and ethical assessment process for this candidate? Option A. Admit the candidate, but require them to retake introductory undergraduate courses in research methodology as a punitive measure. Option B. Immediately reject the candidate's application due to the past academic integrity violation, regardless of the explanation or time elapsed. Option C. Admit the candidate without any further consideration or conditions, assuming the past incident is not indicative of future behavior. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's application, including their explanation and evidence of rehabilitation, to make an informed decision about admission, potentially with specific conditions related to academic integrity. Correct answer is B. Immediately reject the candidate's application due to the past academic integrity violation, regardless of the explanation or time elapsed. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a candidate who has demonstrated exceptional academic aptitude, but has a documented history of academic misconduct during their undergraduate studies at a previous institution. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to admitting talented students with its responsibility to uphold academic integrity and the reputation of its degrees. A careful judgment is needed to determine if the candidate's past actions pose an unacceptable risk to the academic environment, or if they represent a learning experience that has led to genuine growth and a commitment to ethical conduct. The correct approach involves a thorough, individualized review of the candidate's application, focusing on the nature and severity of the past misconduct, the time elapsed since the incident, the candidate's explanation, and any evidence of rehabilitation or learning, and the specific program they are applying to. This approach aligns with principles of fairness and due process, allowing for a nuanced decision that considers all relevant factors. It also implicitly adheres to the American University of Morelos' stated commitment to academic integrity and its responsibility to ensure that all admitted students understand and respect these principles. The university's internal guidelines, which would likely emphasize a holistic review process and a commitment to fostering an ethical academic community, would support this individualized assessment. An approach that immediately rejects the candidate based solely on the past misconduct, without any further investigation or consideration of mitigating factors, fails to uphold principles of fairness and rehabilitation. It assumes that past behavior is an immutable predictor of future conduct, which can be overly punitive and may overlook genuine personal growth. This approach could also be seen as inconsistent with a university's mission to educate and develop individuals. Another incorrect approach would be to admit the candidate without any conditions or further scrutiny, despite the documented history of academic misconduct. This would disregard the seriousness of academic integrity violations and could undermine the university's commitment to upholding ethical standards. It would also fail to adequately protect the academic environment from potential future breaches. Such an approach would likely contravene internal university policies designed to safeguard academic integrity and could expose the university to reputational damage. A third incorrect approach would be to admit the candidate, but impose overly burdensome or irrelevant conditions that do not directly address the nature of the past misconduct. This would be an arbitrary and potentially discriminatory application of university policy, failing to provide a clear path for the candidate to demonstrate their commitment to academic integrity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured review that includes 1. Acknowledging the documented issue. 2. Seeking all relevant information, including the candidate's perspective and any supporting evidence. 3. Evaluating the information against established university policies and ethical guidelines for academic integrity. 4. Considering the potential impact on the university community and the integrity of its programs. 5. Making a decision that is fair, consistent, and defensible with clear reasoning. 6. If admission is granted, establishing appropriate conditions or support mechanisms to foster future ethical conduct. Question 10. The assessment process reveals that a candidate for admission to the American University of Morelos has, in their submitted essay, inadvertently plagiarized a small section from an online source without proper attribution, citing a lack of awareness of the university's specific citation guidelines as the reason. The admissions committee must decide how to proceed. Option A. Grant unconditional acceptance, considering the essay as a minor oversight and focusing solely on the candidate's academic achievements. Option B. Offer conditional acceptance contingent upon the candidate successfully completing a mandatory academic integrity and citation workshop before the start of their first semester. Option C. Request the candidate to resubmit the essay with proper citations, without any further action or consequence. Option D. Reject the candidate outright due to the violation of academic integrity principles, regardless of the candidate's other qualifications. The correct answer is B. Offer conditional acceptance contingent upon the candidate successfully completing a mandatory academic integrity and citation workshop before the start of their first semester. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a candidate's potential for academic success, but also highlights a significant gap in their understanding of ethical conduct within the academic and professional spheres. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the admissions committee to balance the desire to admit promising students with the imperative to uphold the university's integrity and the standards expected of its graduates. A careful judgment is required to determine if the candidate's ethical shortcomings are a result of a lack of knowledge, which can be remedied through education, or a fundamental character flaw that would pose a risk to the institution and the profession. The correct approach involves recognizing that the candidate's ethical lapse, while concerning, appears to stem from a misunderstanding of academic integrity principles rather than malicious intent. This approach prioritizes education and remediation. By offering the candidate a conditional acceptance contingent upon completing an ethics module, the university demonstrates its commitment to fostering ethical development. This aligns with the American University of Morelos' presumed regulatory framework, which would emphasize the importance of ethical training as a foundational element of higher education, preparing students for responsible professional practice. This approach is ethically sound, as it provides an opportunity for growth and learning, reflecting a belief in the transformative power of education. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate rejection, without considering the possibility of learning or remediation, fails to acknowledge the educational mission of the university. This approach risks overlooking a potentially valuable student who simply lacks awareness of specific ethical guidelines. It also fails to address the root cause of the ethical lapse, which might be a knowledge deficit. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the ethical lapse entirely and grant unconditional acceptance, would be a severe dereliction of duty. This would undermine the university's commitment to academic integrity and could set a dangerous precedent, potentially admitting individuals who may later engage in unethical professional conduct, thereby damaging the reputation of the institution and the profession. Such an approach would violate implicit ethical guidelines that require institutions to ensure their graduates meet certain standards of conduct. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a multifaceted evaluation. First, assess the nature and severity of the ethical lapse. Is it a minor oversight or a deliberate act of dishonesty? Second, consider the candidate's overall profile, including academic merit and potential. Third, evaluate the possibility of remediation. Can the candidate learn from this experience and develop a stronger ethical compass? Finally, weigh the risks and benefits of different actions, always prioritizing the integrity of the institution and the ethical standards of the profession. In this case, the candidate's lapse, while serious, appears to be a teachable moment, making conditional acceptance the most responsible and ethically justifiable path. Question 11. The assessment process reveals a candidate's application includes a disclosure of a past instance of plagiarism in a high school assignment, for which they received a failing grade on that assignment, but were not otherwise disciplined by the institution. The admissions committee is considering whether this disclosure warrants further investigation or impacts the candidate's eligibility for admission to the American University of Morelos. Option A. Request a detailed explanation from the candidate about the plagiarism incident, and then make a decision based solely on whether the candidate can articulate a convincing argument for their admission, irrespective of the university's specific policies on academic integrity. Option B. Immediately reject the candidate's application due to any instance of plagiarism, regardless of its severity, or the candidate's subsequent academic performance or personal growth. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's academic record and any supporting documentation provided, considering the nature of the plagiarism, the candidate's age and context at the time, and any evidence of remorse or learning from the experience, in alignment with the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and its holistic review policy. Option D. Overlook the disclosure of plagiarism, assuming it was a minor youthful indiscretion that will not affect their performance at the university, and proceed with admission without further inquiry. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's academic record and any supporting documentation provided, considering the nature of the plagiarism, the candidate's age and context at the time, and any evidence of remorse or learning from the experience, in alignment with the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and its holistic review policy. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a candidate's potential, but also highlights areas where their understanding of ethical conduct and regulatory compliance within the American University of Morelos's academic and administrative framework may be underdeveloped. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an admissions committee member to balance the university's mission of academic excellence with its commitment to integrity and adherence to its own established policies. A careful judgment is required to ensure that admitted students not only possess academic merit, but also demonstrate an understanding of and respect for the university's ethical standards. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's application materials, focusing on any disclosed instances of academic misconduct or ethical lapses. This approach is right because it directly aligns with the American University of Morelos's stated commitment to academic integrity and ethical behavior, as outlined in its admissions policies and student conduct codes. These internal regulations are designed to uphold the university's reputation and ensure a fair and honest academic environment. By scrutinizing the candidate's past actions against these established standards, the committee demonstrates due diligence and upholds the university's values. An incorrect approach would be to overlook or minimize any disclosed instances of academic misconduct, assuming they are minor or irrelevant to future academic success. This fails to acknowledge the university's explicit policies on academic integrity, which often treat such offenses seriously regardless of perceived severity. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the candidate based on a single, minor infraction without considering the context or the candidate's subsequent actions or reflections, which can be overly punitive and contrary to a holistic review process that allows for growth and learning. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes filling a quota or meeting enrollment targets over adherence to ethical admission standards is a significant regulatory and ethical failure, undermining the integrity of the entire admissions process and the university's reputation. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of all application components against established university criteria. This includes a careful consideration of any disclosures related to academic integrity or ethical conduct, weighing them against the university's specific policies and guidelines. When faced with potentially problematic information, professionals should seek clarification, consult relevant university policies, and engage in collegial discussion with other committee members to ensure a fair and consistent decision-making process that upholds both academic standards and ethical principles. Question 12. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a technical glitch affecting the online proctoring system during the American University of Morelos entrance exam, with a high potential impact on exam integrity and applicant fairness. Which of the following represents the most appropriate next step for the admissions committee? Option A. Immediately cancel the online proctoring component of the exam and revert to a fully in-person examination format to eliminate the risk. Option B. Assign a low priority to this risk due to the moderate likelihood and focus resources on risks with high likelihood. Option C. Conduct a detailed impact assessment to understand the specific consequences of a technical glitch on exam fairness and academic integrity, and develop targeted mitigation and contingency plans. Option D. Rely solely on the numerical score of the risk matrix to determine the severity of the issue and allocate minimal resources for a generic IT support response. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed impact assessment to understand the specific consequences of a technical glitch on exam fairness and academic integrity, and develop targeted mitigation and contingency plans. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the applicant to interpret a risk matrix in the context of a university's entrance examination admission process. The challenge lies in moving beyond a purely quantitative assessment of risk to a qualitative and ethical judgment about the implications for fairness and academic integrity. The university must balance its desire to admit qualified students with the need to maintain a rigorous and equitable admissions process. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach aligns with the university's mission and ethical standards, as well as any implicit or explicit regulatory expectations for educational institutions regarding admissions. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that considers not only the likelihood and severity of risks identified in the matrix, but also their potential consequences on the integrity of the admissions process and the university's reputation. This approach is professionally sound because it mandates a proactive and holistic evaluation. It requires the admissions committee to consider how identified risks might affect the fairness of the examination, the validity of the results, and the overall perception of the American University of Morelos' academic standards. This aligns with the ethical obligation of educational institutions to uphold academic integrity and ensure equitable treatment of all applicants. While specific regulations for university entrance exams in Mexico might not be as detailed as in other sectors, the overarching principles of fairness, transparency, and due diligence are universally applicable and expected. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the numerical scores within the risk matrix, without considering the qualitative implications, would be professionally deficient. This would fail to address the potential for systemic issues or biases that might be masked by simple numerical ratings. It neglects the ethical imperative to ensure that the admissions process is not only efficient but also just. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes expediency over thoroughness, such as immediately implementing the highest-rated risk mitigation without further analysis, would also be problematic. This could lead to unnecessary or ineffective interventions, potentially disadvantaging certain applicant groups or misallocating resources. It bypasses the critical step of understanding the root causes and broader impacts of the identified risks. A third incorrect approach that involves ignoring risks deemed low without understanding the cumulative effect or potential for escalation would be a failure of due diligence. Even low-probability risks can have significant consequences if they materialize, especially in a high-stakes context like university admissions. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a structured process. First, clearly define the problem and the scope of the risk assessment. Second, identify and analyze the risks using appropriate tools like a risk matrix. Third, evaluate the potential impacts of each risk. Fourth, develop and prioritize mitigation strategies. And fifth, monitor and review the effectiveness of these strategies. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and aligned with institutional objectives. Question 13. The evaluation methodology shows a need to assess applicants for the American University of Morelos based on a comprehensive review of their academic achievements, extracurricular involvement, and personal statements, while also considering the university's enrollment targets and financial sustainability. Which approach best upholds the integrity of the admissions process and the university's academic mission? Option A. Prioritize applicants who demonstrate exceptional academic potential and a strong alignment with the university's program offerings, as evidenced by their holistic application profile, ensuring adherence to established admissions criteria. Option B. Focus primarily on applicants who achieve the highest scores on standardized entrance examinations, as this is the most objective measure of academic readiness. Option C. Give preference to applicants with strong recommendations from current faculty or alumni, especially those who have a personal connection to the admissions committee. Option D. Favor applicants who have the capacity to secure significant external funding or scholarships, thereby contributing to the university's financial stability. The correct answer is A. Prioritize applicants who demonstrate exceptional academic potential and a strong alignment with the university's program offerings, as evidenced by their holistic application profile, ensuring adherence to established admissions criteria. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the admissions committee must balance the university's commitment to academic excellence with its responsibility to ensure a fair and equitable admissions process. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to decisions that compromise the integrity of the evaluation. Careful judgment is required to uphold the stated academic standards, while also considering the broader implications of admissions decisions on the university's reputation and its commitment to diversity and inclusion. Correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the applicant's academic record, extracurricular achievements, and personal essays, assessed against clearly defined admissions criteria. This methodology aligns with the American University of Morelos' stated commitment to academic rigor and holistic evaluation. It ensures that all applicants are judged on a consistent and transparent basis, minimizing the risk of bias and upholding the principle of meritocracy. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes fairness and objective assessment, which are fundamental to educational institutions. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize applicants based on their potential to contribute financially to the university, such as through scholarships or future donations. This fails to adhere to the core academic mission of the university and introduces an element of financial favoritism, which is ethically questionable and undermines the principle of equal opportunity. It also risks admitting students who may not meet the academic standards, potentially impacting the overall quality of education and the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to grant preferential treatment to applicants based on personal connections or affiliations with university faculty or administration. This constitutes a conflict of interest and violates principles of fairness and impartiality. Such practices can lead to accusations of nepotism and favoritism, eroding trust in the admissions process and damaging the university's credibility. It also means that more deserving candidates might be overlooked. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to solely focus on standardized test scores, disregarding other crucial aspects of an applicant's profile. While standardized tests are a component of evaluation, an over-reliance on them can disadvantage well-rounded candidates who may excel in other areas but perform less optimally on these specific tests. This narrow focus fails to capture the full potential of an applicant and is not in line with a holistic evaluation methodology. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's mission, values, and admissions policies. Admissions committees should be trained to identify and mitigate potential biases. Decisions should be based on objective criteria and documented thoroughly. When faced with conflicting priorities, professionals should always err on the side of fairness, transparency, and adherence to established ethical and regulatory guidelines. Question 14. Governance review demonstrates a strategic imperative for American University of Morelos to significantly increase student enrollment over the next 5 years to enhance financial sustainability. However, current faculty numbers and campus infrastructure are operating at near capacity, which approach best balances the university's growth objectives with its commitment to academic quality and student welfare. Option A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment evaluating the potential effects of increased enrollment on faculty workload, student-faculty ratios, curriculum delivery, student support services, and overall learning outcomes, and develop mitigation strategies accordingly. Option B. Undertake a rapid expansion of student intake, relying on existing faculty to manage larger class sizes and deferring infrastructure upgrades until enrollment targets are met. Option C. Prioritize securing new revenue streams through increased enrollment, assuming that financial gains will naturally enable future investments in resources. Option D. Implement a limited increase in enrollment based on informal feedback from department heads regarding their perceived capacity. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment evaluating the potential effects of increased enrollment on faculty workload, student-faculty ratios, curriculum delivery, student support services, and overall learning outcomes, and develop mitigation strategies accordingly. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's strategic growth objectives and the ethical imperative to ensure academic integrity and student welfare. The pressure to expand enrollment without a corresponding increase in faculty and resources creates a risk of compromising educational quality, which directly impacts the university's reputation and its accreditation standing. Careful judgment is required to balance financial viability with the core mission of providing a high-quality education. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that prioritizes student learning outcomes and faculty capacity. This approach is right because it aligns with the fundamental ethical obligations of an educational institution to its students and the principles of responsible governance. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of academic accreditation standards, which emphasize quality assurance, resource adequacy, and student success. By systematically evaluating the potential consequences of expansion on teaching quality, student support services, and faculty workload, the university can make informed decisions that mitigate risks and uphold its educational mission. This proactive and data-driven assessment is crucial for maintaining institutional integrity and long-term sustainability. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on revenue generation without considering the educational impact fails to acknowledge the primary purpose of a university. This approach is ethically unsound as it prioritizes financial gain over the quality of education and student experience, potentially leading to a decline in academic standards and student satisfaction. Such a focus could also violate implicit or explicit promises made to students regarding the quality of their education. Another incorrect approach that involves a superficial review of existing infrastructure without a forward-looking analysis of increased demand is also professionally unacceptable. This overlooks the critical need to anticipate and plan for the consequences of growth. It represents a failure in due diligence and strategic planning, potentially leading to overcrowded classrooms, inadequate student support, and overburdened faculty, all of which undermine the educational mission and could jeopardize accreditation. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few key stakeholders without rigorous data collection and analysis is similarly flawed. This lacks the objectivity and comprehensiveness required for sound decision-making in an academic governance context. It risks making decisions based on incomplete or biased information, leading to unintended negative consequences for the university and its students. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach that begins with clearly defining the objectives and potential impacts of any proposed change. This should be followed by a thorough data collection and analysis phase, considering both quantitative and qualitative factors. Stakeholder engagement, including faculty, students, and administration, is essential to gather diverse perspectives and ensure buy-in. Finally, decisions should be made based on a comprehensive understanding of the potential consequences, with a clear plan for monitoring and evaluation to ensure ongoing alignment with the university's mission and ethical obligations. Question 15. The assessment process reveals a candidate's application contains a section that closely mirrors publicly available research without proper citation, raising concerns about potential academic misconduct. The admissions committee must decide how to proceed. Option A. Admit the candidate without further inquiry, assuming it was an unintentional oversight. Option B. Admit the candidate but assign them to a remedial academic integrity workshop without informing them of the specific reason for this requirement. Option C. Immediately reject the candidate's application due to the apparent lack of proper citation. Option D. Request a written explanation from the candidate regarding the source of the text and the citation practices used, and consult the American University of Morelos' admissions policy on academic integrity before making a final decision. The correct answer is D. Request a written explanation from the candidate regarding the source of the text and the citation practices used, and consult the American University of Morelos' admissions policy on academic integrity before making a final decision. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a candidate's potential, but also highlights areas where their understanding of academic integrity and ethical conduct might be underdeveloped. This scenario is professionally challenging because the admissions committee must balance the desire to admit promising students with the imperative to uphold the university's standards and the integrity of the academic community. A careful judgment is required to distinguish between a minor oversight and a fundamental disregard for ethical principles. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's application materials, specifically looking for any evidence of plagiarism or academic dishonesty. If such evidence is found, the appropriate action is to request a detailed explanation from the candidate and to consult the American University of Morelos' admissions policy on academic integrity. This approach is correct because it adheres to the university's stated commitment to academic honesty, which is a cornerstone of any reputable educational institution. It allows for a fair and thorough evaluation of the candidate's situation, providing them an opportunity to explain their actions, while ensuring the university upholds its ethical obligations to its students and the broader academic world. This aligns with the principles of due process and fairness in admissions. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the candidate without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge that misunderstandings or errors can occur, and it bypasses the opportunity for the candidate to clarify their situation. Ethically, this is problematic as it assumes guilt without a fair hearing. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the potential issue entirely, admitting the candidate without addressing the discrepancy. This undermines the university's commitment to academic integrity and sets a dangerous precedent, potentially signaling to other students that such conduct is acceptable. It also fails to fulfill the university's duty to ensure that admitted students are prepared for and committed to an ethical academic environment. A third incorrect approach would be to admit the candidate, but impose a punitive, undisclosed sanction. This lacks transparency and fairness, as the candidate would not understand the basis of the sanction, and it fails to address the root cause of the potential academic integrity issue. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to institutional policy. This involves a systematic review of all application components, a clear understanding of the university's ethical guidelines, and a process for addressing potential discrepancies or concerns. When issues of academic integrity arise, the process should include an opportunity for the applicant to respond, and for the admissions committee to make an informed decision based on established policies and ethical considerations. Question 16. The assessment process reveals a candidate with exceptional academic potential, but a documented instance of plagiarism in a prior academic assignment, for which they received a failing grade. The candidate has since completed further coursework with excellent results and provided a reflective statement addressing the incident. What is the most appropriate approach for the admissions committee to consider when evaluating this candidate's application to American University of Morelos? Option A. Automatically reject the candidate's application due to the past academic misconduct, regardless of subsequent improvements or explanations. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's entire application, including the reflective statement and subsequent academic performance, to assess their current suitability and commitment to academic integrity, potentially offering admission with specific conditions or a probationary period. Option C. Admit the candidate without any further consideration of the plagiarism incident, focusing solely on their current academic achievements and potential. Option D. Request a formal disciplinary hearing for the candidate at American University of Morelos to address the past plagiarism before any admission decision is made. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's entire application, including the reflective statement and subsequent academic performance, to assess their current suitability and commitment to academic integrity, potentially offering admission with specific conditions or a probationary period. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a candidate with a strong academic record, but a history of academic misconduct at a previous institution. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with its goal of admitting qualified students. The admissions committee must carefully judge the candidate's potential for success at American University of Morelos, while also upholding the institution's standards and reputation. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to understand the potential ramifications of admitting or rejecting such a candidate. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the candidate's application, focusing on understanding the nature and context of the previous academic misconduct, the candidate's subsequent actions and reflections, and their current academic preparedness. This approach aligns with the American University of Morelos' commitment to fairness and due process, as outlined in its admissions policies and ethical guidelines. It prioritizes a holistic evaluation, seeking to determine if the candidate has demonstrated genuine remorse, learned from their past mistakes, and is likely to adhere to the university's academic integrity standards moving forward. This aligns with the principle of rehabilitation and the belief that individuals can grow and change. An incorrect approach would be to automatically reject the candidate based solely on the past misconduct without further investigation. This fails to consider the possibility of rehabilitation and personal growth, potentially denying an otherwise capable student an opportunity. It also risks being overly punitive and not reflective of a nuanced understanding of academic integrity issues. Another incorrect approach would be to admit the candidate without any conditions or further scrutiny, ignoring the red flags raised by the academic misconduct. This would undermine the university's commitment to academic integrity and could set a precedent that tolerates such behavior, potentially impacting the learning environment for other students and the university's reputation. A third incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the candidate's academic achievements without acknowledging the ethical dimension of their past actions. This prioritizes performance over character, which is contrary to the holistic development goals of higher education. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured review process that includes gathering all relevant information, seeking clarification where necessary, considering the severity and context of past issues, evaluating the candidate's demonstrated growth and commitment to ethical conduct, and making a decision that is consistent with the university's mission, values, and regulatory framework for admission. This process should be transparent and fair, ensuring that all candidates are evaluated equitably. Question 17. The assessment process reveals a candidate's application contains a minor discrepancy regarding a previously held leadership position, which could be interpreted as a slight embellishment of their responsibilities. While their academic record is strong, this discrepancy raises a question about their adherence to honesty in their application materials. Option A. Reject the candidate's application immediately due to any misrepresentation, regardless of its perceived severity or academic performance. Option B. Admit the candidate but require them to submit a formal written apology for the embellishment as a condition of enrollment. Option C. Proceed with admitting the candidate, noting the discrepancy for future observation by their academic advisor and focusing primarily on their academic achievements. Option D. Request a clarification from the candidate regarding the discrepancy, providing them an opportunity to explain their statement before making a final decision. The correct answer is C. Proceed with admitting the candidate, noting the discrepancy for future observation by their academic advisor and focusing primarily on their academic achievements. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a candidate's potential, but also highlights areas where their understanding of ethical conduct and regulatory compliance within the Mexican higher education context may be underdeveloped. This scenario is professionally challenging because the admissions committee must not only evaluate academic merit, but also ensure that admitted students possess the foundational ethical principles and awareness of institutional guidelines necessary for a responsible academic and professional future. Misjudging a candidate's ethical compass can have long-term repercussions for the university's reputation and the integrity of its graduates. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's responses, specifically looking for evidence of understanding and commitment to the American University of Morelos' stated ethical principles and admission policies. This includes recognizing any potential conflicts of interest or misrepresentations, and assessing the candidate's willingness to adhere to academic integrity standards as outlined in the university's handbook. The justification lies in the university's inherent responsibility to uphold its values and ensure a fair and ethical admissions process, as mandated by its own internal regulations and general principles of academic governance in Mexico. This proactive stance prevents potential future ethical breaches and reinforces the university's commitment to integrity. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on academic scores, disregarding any ethical concerns raised, fails to meet the university's obligation to assess the whole candidate. This overlooks the implicit requirement for ethical conduct in academic pursuits, which is a cornerstone of responsible education. Another incorrect approach that dismisses ethical concerns as minor or subjective, without further investigation or consideration of university policy, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential impact of such issues. This can lead to admitting individuals who may later violate academic integrity or institutional rules, thereby compromising the university's standards. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes filling enrollment quotas above all else, even when ethical red flags are present, directly contravenes the principles of responsible admissions and institutional integrity, potentially leading to a compromised student body and a damaged reputation. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a multifaceted evaluation. First, identify and clearly articulate any ethical concerns or potential policy violations. Second, consult the relevant university policies and ethical guidelines to understand the specific regulations applicable to the situation. Third, seek clarification or further information from the candidate if necessary, ensuring a fair and transparent process. Fourth, engage in a collegial discussion with other members of the admissions committee to weigh the evidence and reach a consensus based on established criteria and institutional values. Finally, document the decision-making process thoroughly, providing clear justification for the outcome. Question 18. The performance metrics show a statistically significant dip in the average score for a particular section of the American University of Morelos entrance exam compared to previous years, prompting a review of the applicant pool's preparedness. Option A. Conduct a detailed analysis of the specific questions within that section to identify potential ambiguities or errors, and cross-reference applicant performance with any documented extenuating circumstances provided during the application process, in accordance with the American University of Morelos' assessment review guidelines. Option B. Disregard the recent performance metrics as an anomaly and proceed with admissions based on historical acceptance rates and qualitative assessments alone. Option C. Immediately recommend a higher minimum score threshold for admission to compensate for the perceived decline in applicant quality based on the observed performance dip. Option D. Initiate a broad review of the entire entrance exam structure and scoring system, assuming systemic flaws, without first investigating the specific section's performance data in detail. The correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed analysis of the specific questions within that section to identify potential ambiguities or errors, and cross-reference applicant performance with any documented extenuating circumstances provided during the application process, in accordance with the American University of Morelos' assessment review guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret performance data within the specific context of the American University of Morelos' entrance exam regulations and ethical guidelines. The challenge lies in distinguishing between genuine academic underperformance that might warrant intervention and external factors that could be influencing results, while adhering strictly to the university's established procedures. A hasty or misinformed decision could unfairly disadvantage applicants or compromise the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based review that considers all relevant factors and adheres to the American University of Morelos' established assessment protocols. This means not only looking at the raw performance metrics, but also cross-referencing them with applicant profiles, any documented extenuating circumstances, and the specific criteria outlined in the university's entrance exam guidelines. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible because it prioritizes fairness, due process, and adherence to institutional policy, ensuring that decisions are objective and justifiable according to the university's own framework. An incorrect approach would be to immediately flag applicants based solely on a single performance metric without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge that entrance exam performance can be influenced by a multitude of factors beyond a candidate's inherent academic ability, such as test anxiety, unforeseen personal issues on the day of the exam, or even minor technical glitches. Such an approach risks misinterpreting data and making arbitrary judgments, which is contrary to the principles of equitable assessment and could violate the spirit of the American University of Morelos' admissions policies, which likely emphasize a holistic review. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the performance metrics entirely and rely solely on subjective impressions or anecdotal evidence. This disregards the objective data that the university has chosen to collect and analyze, undermining the validity of the performance metrics themselves. It also opens the door to bias and inconsistency, as subjective impressions are inherently less reliable and harder to justify than data-driven assessments. This would be a failure to follow the established regulatory framework for evaluating entrance exam performance. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to seek external opinions or benchmarks from other institutions without first consulting the American University of Morelos' specific guidelines. While external perspectives can sometimes be valuable, the primary obligation is to adhere to the internal regulations and standards set by the university for its own entrance exam. Deviating from these internal standards without explicit authorization or a clear rationale based on the university's own framework would be a breach of professional duty. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory framework and guidelines governing the assessment. 2. Gathering all relevant data, both quantitative and qualitative. 3. Analyzing the data objectively, considering potential influencing factors. 4. Consulting internal policies and procedures for guidance on interpretation and action. 5. Documenting the decision-making process and rationale thoroughly. 6. Seeking clarification from superiors or relevant committees if ambiguity exists. Question 19. The audit findings indicate a pattern of procedural inconsistencies in student admissions and financial aid allocation processes at the American University of Morelos, potentially leading to inequitable outcomes. What is the most appropriate initial response to these findings? Option A. Immediately implement minor procedural adjustments to address the most obvious discrepancies and issue a general statement to the university community emphasizing commitment to fairness without detailing the specific audit findings. Option B. Publicly acknowledge the audit findings and initiate a broad, unfocused review of all university processes to identify potential issues without prioritizing the specific areas highlighted by the audit. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis of the identified inconsistencies. Develop a detailed remediation plan with clear timelines and responsible parties, and establish a mechanism for ongoing monitoring and reporting of progress to relevant governing bodies. Option D. Disregard the findings as minor procedural deviations that do not significantly impact the university's overall operational integrity or reputation, and focus resources on other strategic initiatives. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis of the identified inconsistencies. Develop a detailed remediation plan with clear timelines and responsible parties, and establish a mechanism for ongoing monitoring and reporting of progress to relevant governing bodies. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for transparency and accountability with the potential for reputational damage and the need to maintain stakeholder confidence. The audit findings, if not handled appropriately, could lead to significant negative consequences for the American University of Morelos. Careful judgment is required to determine the most ethical and legally compliant course of action. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective assessment of the audit findings to understand their root causes and potential impact. This includes engaging with relevant stakeholders, developing a clear action plan for remediation, and communicating progress transparently. This approach aligns with principles of good governance, ethical conduct, and regulatory compliance, which are paramount for any educational institution. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to continuous improvement and responsible management, fostering trust among students, faculty, staff, and the wider community. An approach that focuses solely on minimizing public disclosure without addressing the underlying issues is ethically flawed. It prioritizes image over substance and fails to uphold the university's responsibility to its stakeholders. This could be seen as a violation of transparency principles and potentially misleading to regulatory bodies or accrediting agencies if such disclosure is required. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the audit findings without proper investigation or to blame individuals without a systemic review. This demonstrates a lack of accountability and an unwillingness to learn from mistakes, which can erode trust and hinder future improvements. It also fails to address the root causes, making recurrence likely. A third incorrect approach might be to implement superficial changes that do not address the core problems identified in the audit. This approach lacks genuine commitment to improvement and can be seen as a way to merely appear compliant without achieving actual positive change. It undermines the purpose of the audit and can lead to continued systemic weaknesses. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations, regulatory adherence, and the long-term well-being of the institution. This involves gathering all relevant information, consulting with legal and compliance experts, considering the potential impact on all stakeholders, and developing a strategy that is both effective and defensible. A proactive and transparent approach, grounded in a commitment to integrity, is always the most prudent course of action. Question 20. Upon reviewing an applicant's file for the American University of Morelos entrance exam, the admissions committee notes a strong academic record in their home country, but also observes a significant gap in their standardized test scores compared to the university's typical admitted student profile. The committee is tasked with assessing the overall impact of admitting this candidate. Which of the following approaches best reflects a responsible and ethical impact assessment for this situation? Option A. Focus primarily on the standardized test scores, as they are a key indicator of academic preparedness, and recommend rejection if the scores fall significantly below the university's benchmark, regardless of other application components. Option B. Prioritize the applicant's perceived social background and any potential networking benefits they might bring to the university, as these factors can contribute to the institution's prestige and alumni engagement. Option C. Make a decision based on the committee members' personal impressions and anecdotal evidence of similar applicants, without a systematic evaluation of the applicant's complete profile or the potential consequences of the decision. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the applicant's entire academic history, extracurricular activities, personal essays, and letters of recommendation to gauge their overall potential and fit for the university, considering the context of their previous educational system and any mitigating factors for the test score discrepancy. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the applicant's entire academic history, extracurricular activities, personal essays, and letters of recommendation to gauge their overall potential and fit for the university, considering the context of their previous educational system and any mitigating factors for the test score discrepancy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to fairly assess a candidate's qualifications. The admissions committee must navigate potential biases, ensure a consistent evaluation process, and uphold the university's reputation. The impact assessment approach is crucial here to understand the potential consequences of different decisions on the applicant, the admissions process, and the university's standing. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective impact assessment of the applicant's submitted materials, considering all aspects of their academic and personal background, without undue influence from external factors or personal opinions. This aligns with the American University of Morelos' commitment to merit-based admissions and fair evaluation, as implicitly guided by principles of academic integrity and equal opportunity, which are foundational to any reputable educational institution. The assessment should focus on verifiable achievements and potential, ensuring that the decision is based on the applicant's suitability for the program. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the applicant's perceived potential, without concrete evidence of past academic performance or relevant skills, would be ethically unsound and professionally irresponsible. This could lead to biased decisions and undermine the credibility of the admissions process. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the applicant's connections or perceived social status over their academic qualifications would violate principles of fairness and meritocracy, potentially leading to the admission of less qualified candidates and damaging the university's reputation. Finally, an approach that dismisses the applicant's application due to a single perceived weakness without a holistic review would fail to recognize the multifaceted nature of a candidate's suitability and could unfairly exclude promising individuals. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the evaluation criteria, gathering all relevant information, conducting an objective impact assessment of potential decisions, and then making a reasoned judgment based on the established criteria and the assessed impacts. This process should be documented to ensure transparency and accountability.